Should the Notre Dame Fighting Irish be considered the new DBU? With the way they recruit and develop, they should certainly be in that conversation. That is today's main topic here on the Portal Podcast.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. The Fighting Irish picked up Ayden Pouncey yesterday, cornerback, 6'2 plus, 175 pounds out of Winter Park, Florida. This is another elite piece for Marcus Freeman, DB coach Mike Mickens, and the Irish to utilize, and it is par for the course. Versatile, length, and most importantly for Notre Dame, physical. You're going to hear me talk about that quite a bit during this show, but here is the baseline. Notre Dame, with its development and the way they've accrued talent over the last 2 to 3 years, are at least in the conversation to be DBU. I'm going to break down the players they brought in, some that didn't even come in as DBs, and show you what they've done with their pro football focus grades, what they've done in terms of total defense of the passing game, and most importantly, what they've got coming in next. Pouncey's just a part of that. So let's get started with him. This is a cornerback that everybody would love to have. Some wanted him as safety, some wanted him as a corner. I personally love him as a wide receiver. And he's the rarest of the rare because he's a guy that's over 6'2", and he's good enough to be not just a kick returner, but an elite kick returner because of his lateral movement. He has very loose hips. Kids his size don't normally have the ability to change direction the way that Ayden Pouncey does. Now, here's still the key in why Notre Dame loves him in the secondary, and they plan to play him at corner. Physical. Ayden will come up and smack somebody. He will also make form tackles when needed, and he's also a player that doesn't care if it's a receiver, a running back, tight end, or anything else. He's just a physical player. That is their prerequisite for recruiting defensive backs. Amen to that. In today's world of college football, if you've got a corner who's just so-so in the screen game and fitting to where he needs to be, that opposing team will all but just put up a sign and says, we're going to go over here to this guy, and we're going to screen you until the cows come home. Here comes a tight end at you. Here comes an offensive tackle. Here comes an H-back. Good luck. They'll do it over and over till you take him out of the game. And then you might be losing your best cover guy. So I understand why Notre Dame is going this direction, but in the case of Pouncey, it's really not a matter of he's physical. He's a little bit of everything. These are just some of the notes that I wrote down about Pouncey and his commitment. Physical. His side-to-side ability is elite. Hand-eye coordination in combination with his vision. Like, he sees a play develop. He charges the football or the ball carrier, and he develops a good angle right away. He doesn't waste steps. So the vision with that is important. Timing. And then finally, he's faster than most receivers, and he's just got such a long stride. Ayden Pouncey reminds me of the kind of guy that you would see run, not saying he's as fast, but like in the 300 hurdles in the Olympics or something like that. He has a very natural long gait, and he chews up a lot of yardage. So all of the things together, yeah, that's an elite player. Some are a little bit concerned about the height. He'll outgrow corner or whatever. Maybe. I don't know. But if Mike Mickens likes a corner, I generally like him too. And the film kind of speaks for itself. Last year, he went up against some really good players and did a great job. He even had a really good game against Orlando Jones. So they had multiple high-level wide receivers. So if you can do that, you can do just about anything. Last point on Pouncey, this is a kid that is a fit. The other thing that Notre Dame does is they sign players that aren't just good. They sign players that will stay, meaning this is the new word for me in the recruiting world and NIL and transfer portal, retention. Say that to yourself about 10 times. Whatever school you root for, is your team retaining top players? The reason that Notre Dame is really good right now is because they do. They don't recruit as well as Ohio State or Georgia and some other schools, but they retain as well or better than anybody. That is the difference for the Irish. And Pouncey fits overall, academically, socially. So I think that is something to be noted. Now let's kind of break down what they've had in recruiting. I mentioned that Pouncey's 6'2 plus, big guy. But not all their DBs are that way. They take some different types. The majority, though, have one key trait beyond the physicality that I brought up, and that's arm length. It is incredible how many long-armed guys they have been able to sign. Doesn't matter if it's a kid from down south or even somebody like Ethan Long they just signed in as a freshman for the Fighting Irish. He's from Connecticut. So Notre Dame has found that. But here's my list in general, and I'll just start with the other DB they got committed in this class. Chasten Smith, Chattanooga, Tennessee, McCallie School, really good program. He's a tackler. I don't think he's quite as physical as Pouncey, but he'll come up and tackle, and he's good in the screen game. That's something I just mentioned a minute ago. It's not coincidence that I'm coming back to it. His change of direction is what you're looking for. I think he can play the field corner position very well. I like Pouncey on either side, but if I had to pick, I'd say boundary. As for his ability to break on the ball, no doubt. 1 foot in the ground, he's going forward. Chasten Smith is not a DB that is going to have to do a whole lot of change with that or worry about his fast twitch muscle fibers. He's that guy. When he's on the football and he's coming up on a guy and he's going to press, he has the length. He will be physical, but he's not overly aggressive. Some high school kids get smoked, even though they're the better player, because they're too aggressive. I liked how he was patient and he has anticipation. He's going to be a good football player for Notre Dame. He's ranked outside the top 300 by some services, but again, if Mike Mickens likes a corner, at this point, they probably deserve some recognition. I'll come back to this point, but Notre Dame was number 4 in the nation this past year in pass defense. They didn't have an elite pass rush, and they were still number 4. That also should tell you something. As far as the other guys that they just signed, they had 6 DBs. I'll just give it a rundown here of my thoughts. These are really quick, not quite as detailed as the first 2. Jadon Blair, maybe the best DB they've signed the last couple of years. You could certainly argue that in terms of his physical upside for the NFL long term. He's 6'4", maybe 6'5". He's from Winston-Salem. He went to Mount Tabor. That is a kid that is just very unique. It's hard to compare him. It's actually hard to grade him. Not many DBs are anywhere near as big as him, but he still changes direction really well. And again, over and over and over again, physical. That is a Notre Dame trademark. Blair brings that to the table. Cree Thomas, Brophy Prep. Notre Dame fans probably remember that school from not too far back, if you know what I mean. Phoenix, Arizona, that area is really good now. High school football, 6 foot, give or take. He's another corner with change of direction, and he has some upside too. He's not just a polished guy only, but he's been coached well. He'll come in and he'll compete. He'll be on the 3 deep as a freshman. He's a good player. Ethan Long, I want to see a little bit more of before I get a full understanding, but he's another long DB, kind of like Jadon Blair, and I don't think he's a guy that is pigeonholed into being the guy that's in the box for free safety. He's just a rangy athlete. He'll figure it out which spot is best for him or whether he's going to be a blitzer, etc. But he is a unique football player, again, because of the length. He'll hit somebody, and he could even be somebody they use in nickel and dime down near the line of scrimmage. It's like an extra linebacker or something once he gains a little more size and strength. Now the player I know the best out of this group, because I literally lived in Tampa for a while, that would be Dallas Golden. Berkeley Prep, know the coach there for a long time. And I knew about Dallas when he was a freshman because I asked like all the players, like, who's next up here? They all pointed to Dallas. He was a freshman then, and he already looked the part, and he just kept getting better. He helped them single-handedly win a state championship because of his ability at running back and receiver. He just dominated in state title game. And I don't even know if corner is his best spot, although he's being recruited to play corner/nickel for the Irish. I think running back or receiver or free safety, any of the 3, you could make a strong case for him. Versatility is something at all schools. This isn't a Notre Dame trait that everybody wants. Dallas Golden has it, but he is a very twitchy player. Mark Zachary, if there's a guy that's even twitchier than Golden, it's Mark Zachary. He's out of Ben Davis, one of the best high school football and basketball programs in the state of Indiana's history. He's a pure corner. I think he is a field corner all day, and he's a guy that could run with anybody. If you want a playing boundary, you could, but with his speed and his change of direction, against those really speedy flankers. I like him there. Love his upside. And then the wild card. This is something I like. Notre Dame does their own evaluations. Brandon Logan was committed, I believe it was Vanderbilt, to play baseball. Obviously, hand-eye coordination is good if you're playing baseball. But he's going to Notre Dame now to be a safety. Pretty physical. Hand-eye coordination is good, and he has a lot of upside. Remember, baseball is not your normal sport. You got to spend a lot of time going down that list of everything you do. Baseball is the most technical sport that I was ever involved with by a mile. And football is too, but hitting a baseball is a whole nother animal. This is a kid that's going to be focused just on football now. He has a chance to be really good at Notre Dame. Not quite as long as like a Jadon Blair, what have you, but with his smarts and his ability to be physical, I think he will fit in really well to the Notre Dame football program. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the development side of things. Going to go over some Pro Football Focus numbers, look at guys that Notre Dame took as corners, one that wasn't even a corner that's now in the NFL and starting, kind of how Mickens in that program has just changed what everybody's looking for in the DBs at the NFL level. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways for you to bet on your favorite player props. Personally, I'm a three-point guy, so something like how many you're going to get in a game, maybe in a half, is something that I'm interested in. Plus, whether you get your first bet in before or after the game, there's live betting options, and of course, player props are a part of it. Don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Let's talk a little bit about the basics here of any position, but we're obviously talking DB for Notre Dame. Get the right players on the bus, get the wrong players off the bus, and then get the right players in the right positions. Here's what I mean. When Cam Hart came to the University of Notre Dame, some schools wanted him at receiver, some wanted him at DB, etc. Most said DB, but Cam wanted to play receiver. The Irish recruited him there, so he came. After about a year, he moved over as a defensive back, but it was a transition. Big guy, 6'2 plus, ended up being over 210 pounds his senior year for the Irish. Even though he was banged up for quite a bit of his career, he's now a starter for the Chargers. Development. This is a great story. Let's look a little bit at his numbers and kind of go over it. But if you think about the ability to make plays, think about this. 6'2", 215-pound corners aren't normal anyway. And they had Benjamin Morrison on the other side. But despite Benjamin Morrison, who just went in the second round, teams avoided Cam Hart. This is what I mean. In 12 games in 2023, he only had 28 passes thrown his way for the whole freaking year. 9.1 yards per catch. If you're happy to go at Benjamin Morrison, that tells you how much development Cam Hart received. That's impressive. Secondarily, here's just some basic grades. 2021, his coverage grade, 71.4. 2022, he was banged up quite a bit, but it was still 63.2. Then in 2023, he was about as good a corner as there was in college football, and PFF agrees. Coverage grade, 84.2. Notre Dame had a great combination with him and Morrison, and it shows. But again, just want to reiterate, one of the reasons that Mickens and Marcus Freeman and just the entire defensive staff trusted in Cam Hart was physicality. He's a guy who had shoulder injuries and was still physical. I have a shoulder injury myself. I know how much pain they cause. He still wanted to come up and hit somebody. If you don't want to hit and you don't want to be physical on every single play, Notre Dame doesn't want you. That is pretty much what I've learned about studying them in another program I'm going to talk about tomorrow, and that's Michigan. They parallel one another in the secondary with that. We're going to talk about the Wolverines as well. But again, physicality. But he was a guy that wasn't as polished, came out playing multiple spots in high school, needed development, but had all the frame and the tools. Notre Dame got him there. Now let's flip it over to Benjamin Morrison. His dad was an NFL guy. His dad trained him. I remember seeing a video of him when he was in Phoenix in high school, and I'm like, This looks like a third or fourth year high-level DB just in terms of technique. This is insane. If he has the ability to tackle and all that. And again, at that point, I didn't know. I'm like, this is the best guy in Notre Dame's class. Then he ended up starting at Notre Dame like game 2 or something like that. I'm like, okay. I know Notre Dame is a little bit brazen with playing some guys early, but I'm like, that's a lot. But he just kept getting better and better. And by the end of his freshman year, Benjamin Morrison not only had the technique, he improved some with the run defense, etc. Although that's one thing that he needs to get better at if he's going to be a long-term NFL player. He's just got to tackle better. But his coverage ability and his ability to break on the ball and time it, almost just baiting quarterbacks, is hilarious. At the college level, it was comical in many instances because it wasn't even close. Like he had to like halfway hesitate at the end to pick off a few of those passes. BC, Clemson, etc. He had games, multiple picks, and he earned it. Mickens and the defensive staff did a great job, but they took a guy right there that was polished and they put him into the fire. They got him more mentally ready than they did physically. That's part of being in the conversation for DBU. If you're going to be in that conversation, and I'm not saying they're there yet, they got to prove it for a little while longer for me, but they also have trended in that direction with different kinds of players. That's a really good sign for Notre Dame football. Next, this is the guy that is currently on campus and is one of, if not the best cornerback returning in 2025. When Morrison got hurt, in stepped Leonard Moore. He was actually better. That's kind of insane. But here are the grades for true freshman Leonard Moore from last year. Another long kid, about 6'1" or so. Coverage grade, 81.4. Defense, 84.7. This is the one that shocked me. I didn't know this until I read it this morning. Leonard Moore's run defensive grade on Pro Football Focus, 90.2. Like, I don't know if I believe that because most freshmen suck at tackling. At the elite level, they suck. Apparently, that's not the case. Tackling, they got him at 67.5, so that tells me he understands run defense in terms of where to be in placement, but that's really impressive. Also, he was targeted a lot because he was the young guy. I get it. Christian Gray didn't get as many throws his way for a lot of the year. 43 passes came Leonard Moore's direction. Only 19 were completed. Now, he got beat over the top some because teams had to throw a lot against Notre Dame, especially that USC game. But Notre Dame did a really good job. And just like with Christian Gray, they were a part of the combination that helped Penn State to literally 0 receptions, 0 at the wide receiver position in that game last year. That's incredible. I don't think I've ever even heard of a stat like that before. So at the end of the year, they were pretty darn good. I think that Notre Dame is in that area again to be considered for DBU. But let's talk about one last thing to kind of put this in perspective. And it's what I call the profile. This is for Notre Dame or anybody else. And I'm going to go over this next here on the Portal Podcast. Because if you're going to be an elite program, what Notre Dame's doing, I expect some other teams to copy. And we're going to get into some of the specifics of the body movements and all that. But there's a key category on the profile. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena. And with GameTime, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. GameTime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60% off. Here's a great reason to use GameTime. It's not just NBA. It could be a comedy event. It could be theater. It could be tickets for you and your buddies just to go and hang out. But 60% off never goes out of style. And this is something that I love, all-in pricing. How often have you been in a store in your lifetime, I know this happened to me, where you go and you see a price, okay, that's cool. You get to the counter, that's not the price. With GameTime, you have all-in pricing, so you don't have to worry about it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The profile. This is something that you have to understand in terms of who you are as a program, what you're going to run, who you're going against. It all adds up. This is not just a basic arithmetic problem. This is calculus. Notre Dame has USC on the schedule every year. They plan to be in the playoffs every year. You're going to face big-time quarterbacks. You're going to face big-time receivers. You're not always going to be successful, but you still have to find a way to win games. Well, the profile for Notre Dame is pretty basic. Mike Mickens wants physical players, as we've talked about. They've got to have some natural coverage skills. But they also look for guys with upside. Now, I don't understand the full autonomy of this, but Mickens understands by the way guys run, the way they look, which guys are going to get faster after they reach college with their strength program. That's understanding and knowing and utilizing your resources. Now, when I've been told this a couple of times, I'm like, man, that is really hard. Now, Mickens was a good football player and a good athlete and all that, so he can look at it from his own compass, but that's still a lot. But here's an example. I questioned whether Carson Hobbs was going to be a corner at Notre Dame, but now he's talking about he's the fastest guy on the team. I don't know if that's true or not, but he made that proclamation during spring ball, and somebody posted that on social media. I'm like, I don't know if he's the fastest, but I saw a little bit of their spring game. He looked pretty darn fast to me. They found a kid that they liked because he was physical. And I thought, okay, he can be a safety. And then they have figured out how to utilize all the resources to increase his speed, to add it to the physicality. That's the profile. You can't be one or the other if you're going to be an elite program in contention for DBU. It's both speed and power. You must be willing to use it at the right times to maximize who you are. Carson Hobbs is one of the next up guys for the Irish. He'll play quite a bit this year. He's a redshirt freshman, and it's just an example. You could say the same thing for Benjamin Morrison, but probably in reverse. The fluidity, the speed, they were there. He was fairly physical as a freshman, but he needed to add more strength and just experience. I think that's the same kind of deal it was for Hobbs between last year and this year. Like, he's gotten bigger, but he had the mentality to hit and be a physical guy, even more so than what Benjamin Morrison did when he was at Notre Dame as a freshman. Either way, as a coaching staff, you adapt to the player, not the player to the coaching staff. That is how you get an elite program. Another example of this, Georgia. Their offensive line, until this past year, they found all kinds of different guys to match what they needed. They took some 6'3" guys and made them offensive tackles. They maximized what they had in the weight room, athleticism, whatever they found, they put them in the spots they saw fit to fit their scheme. Notre Dame does the same thing with defensive backs, and it's tremendous. That is how you win football games. So again, everybody has to find this, and I'm not saying that every DB coach looks at it the same as Mickens. He takes the physicality part of the game a little bit more, I think, just my opinion, than some other DB coaches. Some guys want, okay, pure coverage. We're not getting beat over the top. Take Iowa. Nobody does a better job of just tackling the football than Iowa over the last 20 years, period. Even Alabama. But they also don't take a lot of chances. They play predominantly cover two, keep everything in front, come up and smack the living you-know-what out of people. That's who they are, and they're great at it. Notre Dame plays more man. So whoever you are, find the pieces for your program. The Irish do it well. Iowa obviously does it very well too, but completely different. The key here is still the physicality and the speed. Can you find players that have upside that are at least somewhat, keyword, somewhat polished when they come in and they can play fairly early? Now, Iowa isn't getting the same kids as Notre Dame necessarily, but they have some kids that are redshirt freshmen that play a lot. They have some guys that end up being seniors that they finally find their niche, whatever it is. So every program has to do that, but it's the profile. You need guys that get bigger, stronger, faster, and can fit into your scheme. You got to coach them up and get them better. In other words, like, it's one thing to get Jadon Blair if you're Notre Dame. I think my dead grandmother could coach him, but you also got to get kids like Brandon Logan and kids like Cam Hart that have had other reasons to play other sports or other positions, and then you've got to transition them into being big-time players. Iowa's another program that's done a great job with that. Bottom line, folks, the profile is working in its Notre Dame style of finding guys, and they put them in the right places. Sometimes it's safety, sometimes it's corner, sometimes it's nickel. They just don't miss. And if they continue on this path in about another year, maybe two, if they continue on this current trend, they will be the DBU. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to get all your latest recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. Please give us a thumbs up, a like, subscribe to this podcast, and share it. I truly appreciate it. And the best thing you can probably do is just comment. If you've got a school out there that you think is still DBU, and I don't really know who it is, have at it. I'll comment. Let's talk about it. If you got another question, running backs, O-line, whatever it may be, let's talk about it on the Portal Podcast. See you again soon right here on the Portal Podcast.